Wonderful. Well, it seems like a number of you have joined this call, so I'll go ahead and kick us off. Welcome to Office Hours with Senator Burr, where we aim to distill the slew of events in DC policy into actual insights for business leaders. Our goal, as always, is to help you cut through the noise and identify what is important and relevant for your business or nonprofit business and point out the trends in policymakers so you can plan for successful outcomes as events evolve. To that end, we're not going to walk through 100 plus executive orders and go detail by detail, but rather we'll call out the implications of key priorities of the incoming administration, what we think early actions mean as far as how they intend to implement these priorities, and how they may manifest either in decisions before Congress or in the implementation of executive orders. So with that, Karina, can I please, I'm Kirsten Axelson. I'm a senior policy advisor with DLA Piper. And can I please turn it over to Karina?
Sure. Thanks, Kirsten. Nice to see everyone. I'm Karina Lynch. I'm part of the government affairs practice here at DLA. Excited to be here with Kirsten and Senator Burr today to talk a little bit about this new era. Senator Burr, we've seen a lot happen since President Trump was sworn in last week. It's only been a week. It feels like it's been a lot longer than that. It's been a lot that's happened in the last week. So curious if you can just tell us a little bit about what you think about some of the unconventional actions the president has taken to date. For example, on Friday, I think it was, or over the weekend, there were 15 inspector generals that were terminated. What you think about these things that are happening and what your impression is of these first few days of the Trump administration and what Congress's reaction has been to the fast pace that we're operating under.
Well, Karina, let me thank those who are on this call. And it's actually been, we didn't have this call last week because of the inauguration, so we've stretched it out. And it does seem like this is like months after the president was inaugurated with everything that's gone on. And I join everybody from Qatar in the Middle East right now, where we're doing exactly the same thing. We're covering with a lot of our clients globally what's going on in Washington. And you alluded to the fact that there have been many initiatives that the president has undertaken. If you look at the HHS platform, he's basically frozen HHS, not just the funding from NIH or CDC, but all the interactions that those agencies might have with applicants at the FDA or with grantees within NIH. None of us know exactly how long that's going to last, but I think it's important to understand that until they get their team in place at all levels in these agencies, I think we're going to be accustomed to a freeze that may extend outside of HHS and may go to other agencies. I think the concerns that people domestically and people around the world had that the president would come out immediately and institute tariffs, there's a sense of relief because the president has asked his cabinet members to thoroughly review where tariffs might be needed, appropriate for the policies that they're going to adopt, and that he wanted a report April the 1st on his desk. So I think that there is some breathing room and there's time for us to work on areas that might be targeted for tariffs, that we want to make sure that there are waivers that are provided to certain sectors of the economy that might be outside of what's targeted. The other thing that's quite apparent is that this administration is extremely serious about spending. We know that Congress still has yet to pass the 25 spending bill. That comes up for expiration in mid-March. We know that the House and the Senate are already in bicameral talks about what they're going to do as it relates to reconciliation, and I'm not sure that any of us know yet whether there's going to be one reconciliation bill or two. I would only say this as a former member of the Finance Committee. I can't envision how you could write a tax code in 30, 60, or 90 days. So it either tells me there's going to be two reconciliations, or there's a likelihood that because of the pressures on Congress, that there may be an extension of 10 years on the current tax code with possibly some changes that affect SALT or some other area that there are members of the House that are interested in. Past that, I think that we're waiting to see exactly how the confirmation hearings continue. Senator Thune has instructed members that if there's obstruction to votes, he'll carry the work of the United States Senate through the weekends, and he certainly did that for part of the weekend this past weekend. I would expect that to be the normal schedule from this point forward, and it all depends on a level of cooperation that they're able to get from Senator Schumer and the Democrats. But, I just want to stress this one point, and I'll stress it over and over again. The difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0 is the president is extremely serious at the disruption that he intends to cause within government and how that disruption is felt outside. I think for many of the federal agencies, they really weren't prepared for this. I think it's something that we've warned our clients about, and we've tried to give as good intelligence there as we could. Exactly what we thought would happen has probably happened on steroids. We didn't believe it would be quite as quick as this, but certainly the magnitude of what this administration is trying to do is pretty broad-based.
Thank you, Senator.
Over to you.
Yes. So, you talked a bit about what's going on in the U.S. How are multinational and global leaders reacting to some of the early actions by the president and his administration?
Well, Kirsten, I think it's been received fairly positively outside the country. I'm not going to comment on the multinational companies that are domestic companies, but I'm now in my second day abroad, and I think what people wanted to hear throughout the Middle East is share with us a little bit about what you see as the roadmap that this administration will follow, and how will they treat their friends versus their adversaries. I think that's beginning to sort itself out, and the administration is really on the road to building stronger friends abroad. And I think this opens up the door for a much more predictable, at least global marketplace as it relates to where we want to play. I don't think that there's anybody that I've met with that doesn't view China in the same way the United States does, as somewhat of a risky a global participant, one that can't be trusted, one that will continue to probably be the subject of congressional legislation, because China is the only bipartisan issue that exists in Washington. But I think we also have to understand that it's all about the supply chain. And when the U.S. and the EU make up 2/3 of the world economy, then there's a pretty loud voice that's there. And I could make the case today that the political shift that we've seen in the United States is minute compared to the political shift we've seen in the European Union this year. So we're going to continue to see governments that shift, power shift in the European Union. And so far, that looks like it's aligning with what the administration in the United States believes is the path forward. Over.
I'm happy to take it, Kirsten. And I just want to remind folks that we do welcome any questions that you might have for Senator Burr, so feel free to drop them in the chat. I know that we said we weren't going to specifically necessarily talk about the executive orders, Senator, but maybe they've been a fast and furious pace. Wonder if there are any that you'd like to take a stab at and talk about the implications of, since I know folks are tracking it. What do you think?
Well, there have been so many. I'm scared to jump in because I might highlight one and not another that people feel is important. But listen, I think that the majority of the executive orders reverse the actions by the Biden administration. And I think one can typically expect that to be the first course of business. From a standpoint of the magnitude of what that did, it reversed a tremendous amount of executive orders that were in place for as much as 4 years, and some that were in place for like 4 days. So it's almost a whipsaw effect of what the Biden administration in the last few days put in, and how quickly the Trump administration reversed those. I've said this on office hours in the past, but don't get too too concerned with what happens day to day. Let's be more concerned with trying to understand exactly what the destination is this White House would like to go to. And I think that the president showed just yesterday, I believe, when Colombia refused to take migrant airlifts, the president very quickly turned around and used tariff threats and other threats as a tool to get Colombia to accept the refugees or the migrants. So when you look at the executive orders and you say, what's the most dominant executive order? The president was serious when he said he's going to take the criminals that are here illegally and he's going to deport them to a country that they came from. And I think we'll continue to see strength, probably 42 executive orders that deal specifically with immigration. And that's going to be utilized in every tool that's in the president's capabilities to use. Some of these over the next several years, Karina, probably will be the subject of congressional legislation so that it's no longer a battle of executive orders when there's a shift at the White House, but they're statutory changes that affect what I think a majority of Americans wanted to see. And I think the primary spot that we will see that is in immigration. My hope is that there will be a bipartisan effort to actually do an immigration bill so that individuals can sort out how they come here legally, and that's the preferred route. The illegal route is going to be cut off significantly, and the reprisals are going to be a return to the country you came from. Over.
Yeah. Along those lines, since we don't have any specific questions on EOs, we have, busy week in Washington coming up. We have the president's nominees for the Department of Commerce and for the Department of Health and Human Services coming before the Senate this week. Putting your hat on as a former member of the Senate Finance Committee, and what do you think we're likely to see the focus on in that confirmation hearing this week?
Clearly, I think that the Congress is going to be interested in understanding what the administration believes is the structure to not only the U.S. economy, but how that fits into the global marketplace. As we're well aware, the United States is one of the developed countries globally that has a debt problem, but they all have a debt problem. So I happen to be in one of the areas of the world where there's not a debt, there's a glut of capital. And these are partnerships that we need going forward to continue to spur economic growth at home. So in part, it's leveraging where there is capital in the world to fuel, as we saw the president go out, I think last week, where it was representatives from SoftBank, it was Larry Ellison from Oracle, and it was Sam Altman from OpenAI. And they committed to invest $200 billion in data center construction in the United States. We're going to continue to see the president reach to the private sector as a partner to fuel the areas of growth that I think most would agree are the areas that should have investment going forward. And they're life science, and it's AI and technology, and it's space. And I think one of the biggest surprises to me as I've come into Qatar is the unbelievable emphasis that they have here on space. Everybody realizes that space is absolutely key to the transfer of this information in real time. And I think up to this point, we've always seen it as a means to get a cable show or to get TV broadcast. And they see it as an absolutely crucial component to commerce. And I think that's what this administration is trying to put together, a streamlined communication link that allows the economies to grow. And clearly, we'll see exactly how the president plugs in crypto and other means in that. I'm way too old to understand crypto, but trust me, the rest of the world is watching the development of new financing tools, new commerce tools, very carefully.
Thank you. So if you are trying to watch and keep track of all of these things, the different executive orders, and you're a business leader, how do you prioritize what really matters for your business versus what is, noise or sort of the shock and awe of a big transition?
Well, listen, Kirsten, I don't think much has changed from a standpoint of the key things you should consider about business decisions that you make. I'll stress one thing, though. The geopolitical landscape is very much one of the top three tools, one of the top three issues that especially multinational companies need to look at. But I would tell you domestic companies as well, because the geopolitical landscape is going to determine the health of the entire global ecosystem of business. And to ignore that is to potentially make decisions where the trend would be negative. It would be a negative impact on the direction that you choose or the investment that you make. So more and more, I think the geopolitical landscape is going to be one of the top three concerns that a company looks at as they make business decisions, investment decisions, and ultimately how they overcome the challenge of logistics in a global marketplace. And I know the three of us are focused very heavily into life science. It's one of the areas that we have deep bench expertise. And there's probably no sector that's going to be impacted more with this global expansion of economies than the life science business. So it's an area of great interest. And as a firm, we're digging extremely deep on this to try to, over the next weeks and months, to provide some real specific data that gives people a better understanding of what decisions they should make and probably those issues that they ought to stay away from. We promote very heavily, or I do, AI and the role that it's going to play. There are also going to be a lot of nefarious players that couch themselves as an AI tool. And it's going to be important that we're able to research those and to share with clients what is safe to go into and what is potentially an area that you want to stay away from, or a company or a product that you want to stay away from. Over.
We do have a couple questions in the chat now, Senator. I'm gonna read one that came in about, and I think you're very well poised to answer this question. What your thoughts are on universities and health systems harnessing the interest in public-private partnerships, given the politics of higher ed that are going on right now?
Well, as you know, we've got a number of higher education clients, and we're counseling them not only on education policy, which, quite honestly, we've yet to see exactly what the Trump administration policy is going to be on higher education, but we've certainly seen higher education impacted by the freeze of NIH dollars, the freeze of CDC dollars. We believe that endowments are a target of revenue, potentially in a tax deal. So I think it's consistent with what we've been telling our higher education clients for some months, that there are areas that they need to be concerned with. There are areas that will be opportunities for them that open up. And I think as we get further into 2025, we'll see AI tools begin to play a larger and larger role of supporting the AI platforms that are there. And it's going to be these tools that are going to need to be trained. And there's going to be a new revenue stream basically off of the data that higher education has. So if you're a higher education institution and you haven't begun to socialize with your board yet, whether you're going to be in the data sales business, and when I say that, de-identified, we're not trying to put anybody's personal data in question. It's an area that higher education has to look at, because that's a very marketable asset that they're going to have. But it's actually going to be absolutely vital to our ability to grow this industry domestically and to grow this technology to where we can fully exploit it. Our adversaries, I will assure you, have been accumulating data for decades, and that's why we have controversy over technology platforms like TikTok. And that is an area that we will watch how it develops. We'll We'll see if the Chinese proposal of the United States government buying 50% and China owning 50%. I don't believe that's going to make it through the gauntlet of the United States Congress. But I believe it's going to be some combination in the future that protects American data. And you can't do that if you use ByteDance's algorithm. So the algorithm is really the crucial thing in the negotiations.
Well, thank you very much. Senator, before we sign off, is there anything else you want to make sure we cover on this week's office hours?
Well, Kirsten, let me just say that I think every day that we wake up, we expect to go to bed that night with something radical that we didn't know at the beginning of the day. And I know I'm catching you at home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not exactly sure in the last 2 hours exactly what's happened because I've been tied up. But I would say to our listeners, don't expect normalcy, meaning that you don't have a 24-hour period where you aren't surprised with something until we're months into this administration. And our ability to deal with them is really about the preparation that our clients make individually about Plan B and Plan C and Plan D. We're going to do our best to give clients the most notice that we can as we talk to our friends on the Hill and as we talk to our friends in the executive branch. But there's never been a point in time where it's more important to have contacts that really understand what the marching orders are that are coming out. We all know how to do crisis management. Our attempt is to get in front of that so that nobody deals with crisis management. We're dealing with known factors that we thought through all the different scenarios, and that from those options, we pick the best ones. That's what we intend to do for the next several months with all of our clients. And I hope that as we move along this, the office hours event will be an opportunity for people to come on, spend 30 minutes and learn just a little bit more about what's happening. I will say what I've said before, because we talked just briefly about some confirmation hearings. I believe that a majority, if not all, of the president's nominees will be confirmed. If there's a takeaway from the election that I had that I probably haven't shared on the show, it's that the national media really has no impact on the American people. If you look at the major networks, they weren't influential at driving a message one way or the other. And the takeaway is that a majority of the American people now get most of their news, if not all of their news, from social media. And they don't have this requirement to fact check everything. Even though I think the reason that the national media is no longer in control of the news is that they didn't necessarily rely on the journalistic skills of the past, where everything was fact checked. And it means it's going to be extremely challenging to know exactly where the American people's heads are on any one thing. And we're going to do everything we can to bring the facts to light so that really our clients can make decisions based upon facts and not based upon rumors. It's going to be no small task, I can assure you.
Well, thank you very much to you, Senator, and Karina, and for all of you who joined us. We'll be having our next office hours on February 10th. Between now and then, it sounds like we need to not have our heads on a swivel, but really be thinking about our critical business milestones coming up in the next year or two, how they may be affected by the administration's priorities, and really be thinking about how to position ourselves in a way to align with some of the key priorities of this administration, including cost cutting, efficiency, and U.S. leadership in a number of critical industries, including technology and life sciences, as Senator Burr mentioned. So please send us your questions in advance if there are particular things you want to cover on February 10th, and we'll see you then.
Thank you both. Good night.
Bye, everybody.